Hey, welcome. You guys, this is our season finale.
I can't believe it.
So I can't either. This is our 24th episode of the Plus Size Podcast.
I have to hug my bear.
It's there. That's right. That's our special gift for our special friends. That's right.
Plus size bear.
He's cute, right? I got her 2 bears. And sorry, we have tough people are here. Hey, listen. So this is a special episode. We will have Dr. Albert join us to talk more about the future of GLP-1s. But this episode is going to be us looking back on the things that have happened over the past several months, the things that we've learned, the moments that we've had, the healing that we've done. And it's cool. I hope that you guys like it, but we're just going to have a good time and talk about our favorite moments today. And then after that, we will have on Dr. Albert. So we're looking back and looking forward. So let's, y'all know who we are. Like if you're a season finale, I'm Kim. That's Kat. That's JT / Janine / the Mounjaro flight attendant. And you know our socials are at the bottom if you want to follow us. Yay! But obviously we're here and we are talking about GLP-1 medications and obesity, and not even just that. Like this next season coming up for the looking forward, we're going to talk about a lot more stuff. We're going to take it a little further. We're going to talk about preventative care, people who don't have obesity yet. You know, we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff, like you can't see food noise. We're going to go pretty deep. We're going to talk to people who have had bariatric surgery and are not taking GLP-1s and the weight that they've lost. Like we're talking about it all.
We are.
So, yep, we got a menopause episode planned. We got lots of good stuff. This conversation could go on for a long time, and we are excited for the community to be a part of that. If you're interested in being on the show, FYI, you can go to our website and click on to submit your story. And it's just a Google form. It's 4 questions. And then you submit that. You just tell us what we're looking for is kind of your underlying stuff. Like what stuff are you dealing with? Is it food noise? Is it PCOS? Insulin resistance? Like what is it? And then we can align with the correct specialist so that we can have a really nice episode where we talk about, you know, your community story, and then the validation comes from the doctors on the clinical side to go, yeah, that makes sense because science, right? So that's what we look to do here. We're trying to change the narrative. We're trying to remove the stigma. We know it's a big job and we need each other to do it. So we need that. If you are watching this episode, please subscribe. If you haven't already, it is free. If you want to be a paid subscriber and get bonus content, you can, but we do not gate knowledge at the Plus Sides. And if you are listening, if you're listening on our audio podcast, please subscribe. Again, it's free. And also do ratings and reviews for us, because that's how we get loud. That's how more people learn about our podcast and learn about what we're doing and are a part of the conversation and a part of the movement. So we hope that you guys will all hang with us while we do that. But for today, we have a montage. In case you don't know, Lydia has joined our team from our community, and she's our social media manager now. And she's gone through and taken some top moments, big hits, special things like aha moments, things like that over the past 23 episodes that have happened.
23?
23. This is 24. And we already got the whole month planned out, and we've got so many doctors and a very special surprise for our season premiere of season 2. So I hope that you will all check in for that. It's very good. And I hope we have good things coming. Anywho, let's get started. You want to say hey right quick? I just ran my mouth a lot.
Hey.
What you got?
Hey.
What you saying? Who you is?
Hey.
Hey.
Who wants to go first?
I'll
go first. I'm Kat.
You're to my right.
At Kat Carter 7.
Yeah.
On TikTok. I've lost 66, 67, depending on what the day of the week, 67 pounds on Mounjaro. I'm just going to say it like a Midwesterner.
Mounjaro.
Mounjaro. I got that Mounjaro.
Mounjaro.
You know, I'm from Omaha.
Oh, yeah, you know the Mounjaro, yeah.
And that's me in a nutshell. I'm a real nut. And there's guys say hello to the ATLian. He is my resident Prince fan, you know, this stuff. But, you know, I've been told I have a shrine behind me.
It might be.
I might, yeah. No, my husband too. I got a Prince shrine. It's all right. It's all right. But that's it. That's here. That's me. Binge eating disorder. Mounjaro helps out a lot, quite a bit. And that's it.
Mounjaro. Well, I am the Janine on all the socials. First name Janine, last name Trot like a horse. I have type 2
Trot
diabetes.
like a horse. I never heard you say that. 23 episodes. That got me good.
Yep, that's me. I have type 2 diabetes. I struggle with late in life obesity, and I have an autoimmune disease, Sjogren's syndrome, which is, we're now talking about it, not us, but it's now being more openly talked about. So I am the Mounjaro flight attendant, and I'm on the Mounjaro.
There you go.
Yeah, you know, I feel like this whole episode we should talk about the Mounjaro. You know, because that's
Margot, too,
fun.
you're from the nerd.
We're talking about the
But you made a really good point in like the other episode where you were like, "Hey, like it's like Kilimanjaro, like climbing the mountain." It's actually probably, if you thought about it, if they had positioned it that way, like in the commercials.
Okay,
you know,
but see, that right there might be a mountain.
oh my god, it totally is, JT. Oh, how did I not pick up on that? I'm freaking marketing.
Look, I'm just saying.
I guess the South Dakota and Nebraska life in me is Mounjaro.
Oh, you know, yeah.
Mounjaro.
Okay, cool. So intro is good. So we hope you'll hang with us. It should be a good episode. And if you haven't seen all the episodes, this is a really good way to figure out what they're about. So, and you can go pick which one you want to watch. You know, we hope you'll do it. It's a big deal. Come on now.
All right. It's a real big deal. And then you can see how our faces have shrunk.
Oh yeah, you totally can see. Yes, you could see the evolution. Yes, that's for sure. We are evolving indeed. Definitely. Awesome. So just keep in mind, guys, like I feel like I kind of said it in the beginning, but like this has evolved, and this is something JT said in the very beginning. She's like, it's not just obesity, Kim, it's health. And I'm like, it's obesity. And she's like, it's not. She's not wrong. It is health. It's about health in general, and it is about obesity, but it's about related diseases and disorders that cause obesity, you know, either now or in the future, and like how to treat them proactively, hopefully, so they never happen, you know. So we've got to talk about that. It includes type 2 diabetes. So we're going to talk about that too. Okay. So anyway, it's about health, season 2. All right. Let's get started. You guys ready? I'm going to bring in the bean footage, not the bean footage, the beautiful bean footage. This is the montage, because, you know, every show needs a montage.
Need a montage.
All right. And we can stop as we go through, and we can have moments like where we go through some stuff, you know, and, you know, we'll go from there. Okay. Here we go. Let's give it a shot. It's new technology.
Oh, welcome. This is the Plus Size Podcast. Yes. The goal of this podcast is to bring education and advocacy around obesity. We want to elevate the conversation of something that people don't really talk about very much.
Obesity and how people are not treated fairly, and there's a weight bias and fat phobia in medicine.
So I think it's really important, because here's the thing. There are not a lot of people that are always going to be able to get access to an obesity specialist doctor, you know, but there are plenty out there that understand these medications, and they aren't necessarily doctors. They're nurse practitioners, they're GPs, you know, and that is really, really important, because they change lives too. So I think it's cool that you're open like that, because honestly, I don't know about you guys, but I had like doctor aversion. Like I in general, I hated going. I was always bad news. They always told me everything was my fault. They always felt like made me feel like I was lazy or stupid or whatever it was. And like, this has been a completely different experience for me.
My goal was, when I started to practice, was bring like forward thinking and new age treatments and medicine to a small town. Bring Vanderbilt to Owensboro, you know, and be innovative, you know, and so I think that's where my passion for all these topics came from.
Yeah, I white knuckled and lost weight many times. My first successful diet was when I was 12. Now, I'd been overweight before, but at age 12, I decided to, in addition to basketball practices, I would go jogging every night and, you know, do calisthenics and stuff. It worked. And I would say, long story short, I learned that was a way to get attention and love from my mother.
Here's what I think some of my thoughts that it breaks down to is that the obesity medicine community has been underserved always. They've not ever had a voice. They've not ever had sound medical advice where they've been taken seriously, where they've really been listened to. And so it's compounded on many aspects. Number one, access to that care extremely limited. There's not enough specialists. There's not enough people that know this information, that are willing to help in this area. So even if you're someone that wants to get this help, there might not be anyone in your city, in your town, even within an hour or two driving. So telehealth provides the opportunity for that specialist to have greater reach. Again, right? This community where people have been struggling with weight, they've been so stigmatized and biased when they go into the doctor that there's almost like a trauma response with that. And so a lot of a lot of my patients, and this is actually me included, myself, when I got help with this, I felt more comfortable accessing a telehealth platform where I could be in the comfort of my home. I could maybe be in a car if I needed to fit into my life, but I felt more comfort than going in this panic of like, they're going to get me on the scale. And then the doctor, when they do that, like that 1, 2, they look you up and down, and it's like all of that, right? And again, I think we're getting better at that. I think we're educating more, but unfortunately, there are just a lot of medical providers that are not up to speed as far as this being a chronic medical condition and how to help and how to recognize their own bias and stigma. Like I even had to realize this and work on it. So.
I'm a type 2 diabetic, and I lead off with that because I am genetically predisposed to diabetes. Doing my best to manage my weight and trying to manage the diabetes with diet and exercise worked to a certain extent, but after a while, it just stopped working.
Yeah. And so, as you said, I do not diet and I do not exercise. And that was a choice that I made at the very beginning because I have dieted and exercised to try to lose weight basically my entire adult life. And it never worked for me. And exercising is exhausting, obviously. But going to the gym for my mental health was terrible. I always thought people were staring at me, and I always thought, well, what's the point? And I know it does good in the end, but it just never resonated in my mind that it was a good thing. But yeah, so I choose not to diet because I don't want to be restricted. I want to know what it's like to have a healthy relationship with food. So in turn, I tell people I'm using this medication as a tool. I want it to teach me that I am perfectly capable of making a healthy portion size and being perfectly okay with it. And I don't have to push myself to the limit that I am so full that I'm extremely uncomfortable. So I made that decision on my own, and I'm really glad that I did because I am for all the people that are choosing to diet and exercise because that's the way that they're losing the weight and it's perfect for them. But for someone like me who does not do well with restriction, this is how it's worked for me, and it's 137 down, so I think I'm doing okay.
But, I've always loved fitness. I think sometimes it turned into a little bit like purging where you over exercise and you work out like 3 times a day. I did fall into that once in a while.
I'm just so glad to be here to educate and to advocate for all of those that need this medication and GLP-1s, period.
Nice.
I've been talking to patients about GLP-1s. I've been talking to them about how, they don't have to say things like, I know I could be trying harder. Because it's so ingrained in them that just giving their normal effort is like substandard because it's beaten into them. They have to give this superhuman effort all the time.
Yes. And that was when GLP-1s came up. And I'm glad they did because I was terrified to start, but it has for sure changed my life. I mean, just what it's done for my brain, like the food noise, not just food noise. It turns out it was really noisy in there, like a lot, like about everything all the time. Like I would unwind my day in my head. I would worry about things that I had no control over constantly, obsessively. And it just went like this, turned off that fast. So that's been incredible for me. But I would love to know, I like how GLP-1s in general, like how do they really work, and how are they like or unlike bariatric surgery.
GLP-1s are amazing.
Yeah.
And they are a paradigm shift, game-changing medication. Whatever superlatives you want to throw out on there are, for the most part, appropriate. And the way they work is really innovative. Some studies are starting to show, and certainly reports from patients who are on the medications, all of those added benefits. After you eat a full meal, you may not worry about what's going on. You just may feel satisfied and good.
Yeah.
And that can be the decrease in food chatter that people talk about, the decrease in anxiety, a calmness that they experience on this medication, all of those sort of ancillary benefits that people are reporting, typically because of GLP-1. People on GLP-1s, who experience less anxiety, maybe there's a role for those medications strictly for anxiety. And I have patients who have come seeing me who need to lose 5 to 10 pounds, but have heard about the anti-anxiety effect of these medications and are asking me to put them on the meds.
Yeah.
And for the
All right, I have to pause it there. That was a moment for me, y'all.
A great
When he
pause
said
for you.
that.
Look at Kim's face.
I know, right?
That's what I look like.
My eyes are closed.
Every
He's
time.
got eyes
Look at the
closed.
cat's just like, mm-hmm.
I know.
I love
Aw.
it. That was a big moment for me. And here, because I remember being like, I remember being like, Dr. Rosen, I call bullshit. I remember that. I remember being like, 5 to 10 pounds, really? But that was early. That was episode 5, and way before we knew about all the different studies and all of the different health things, and disorders and diseases, that these things treat with. And I mean, it's ongoing and it's never ending. It's like, I can't the fact that they're testing it for addiction now. So what if you have addiction and you only have 5 pounds to lose or no weight that you really have to do? You can't take this medication. None of that makes sense. But then I was like, I don't know about this guy. Turns out he's right. And I think that we've learned.
I believed him.
You did? You believed him, JT?
Yes. I
From the
believed
get?
him from the get. And
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, but
I do love him though.
it is just something about Dr. Rosen where you can feel his passion for medicine and for helping people. And I just felt that he would not have said that unless he had something to back it up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he's seen it all, right? He's seen it all. And he just had a better, I think, broader perspective than when we did, And so when he said it, I was kind of like, I don't know about the Dr. Rosen, but at the end of the day, all that we've learned, it makes sense. It tracks. Anyway, I just had to pause there. That was a big moment for me, Y'all let me know if I come to a moment that you want to talk about. Just be like, okay.
right patients, I think it's a reasonable application.
Like you all said, we got together through this TikTok community. I downloaded TikTok last summer and I started getting on my FYP stuff about GLP-1 medications. I'd never even heard of a GLP-1 medication. So it was like Wegovy and Mounjaro, and it was Sam loses it and Nurse April.
Oh yeah.
Were on my page real right away. And I'm like, what's this? This sounds really like me. This is really interesting. So at the time I'd been struggling with obesity. I love how you said genetic obesity. That's and predisposition for so many things. Everyone in my family is obese. I have one sister, my mother and my father. I have 6 aunts, my uncle. They're all obese. Many of them have type 2 diabetic. There's just it just runs in my family.
So I'm curious what what was everything like with the obesity doctor? Did you feel like they heard you a little bit more than maybe another doctor that wasn't a specialist in the area?
Yes. So absolutely. So I felt just even getting in a conversation with her, immediately jumping on, she was like, okay, so tell me about your story. What have you done to try and lose weight in the past?
Yeah.
I'm like, I've done everything. I've done Atkins. I've done Weight Watchers. I've done the Special K diet. I've done Slim Fast.
That was the worst cereal.
The worst. I at the time I was on something called Plenity, which was you take these gel capsules, 9 of them a day, and they make you feel really full and bloated and horrible. It was horrible. So at the time I was on that. And I was like, I've done everything. Like, I've been on a diet since the first time I realized I was overweight was in 6th grade.
I bring people to tears for many reasons. So I have fought the disease of obesity since I was 8 years old. And, that's not something that I think any of us really realize, until recently, that obesity is a disease. And, I just forever blamed myself for all of the reasons that society tells us that people with weight issues, it's their fault. They make you feel like, it's something that is tied to your work ethic. It's tied to your morals, and that if you can't control the size of your body, that it has direct ties to your moral worth. And, that's just not true. And people could have told me that it's a disease. But without taking this medication, I don't know that I would have believed them.
Yeah.
Because I think it is so powerful that I'm taking a medication that I've had binge eating disorder also since I was 8 years old. And the medication shuts it off. It flips it off like a switch for me. And so I've wrestled with this so much in my head. There's no way. How was I going to do that by myself? How was I going to do that without a medication? How is it possible that this disorder that I have is not tied to these hormones that the medication affects? The biggest.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that moment with Rachel. And
Rachel with her facial expression just frozen.
I know. Like, and look at you, your eyes are closed. JT looks great.
Yeah.
I know. But I was just thinking about that moment where she was like specifically talking about not believing it, right? Like not believing that if you hadn't taken it, you wouldn't believe it in. And I feel like JT and I talk about it a lot because we talk about it with Dave, right? Like we're like GLP-1 evangelists. We're like, oh, let the spirit move you. Like, because we've experienced it and we just want everyone to know. So it's like very much this. I feel like this episode and all of them is like shouting from the rooftops, right? Like, let me tell you about my pain and let me tell you about how it's gone, And I think that's a big moment, and kind of like the way the show was set up, is that it continues to be like that for us, being like, did you know my life's different, So I think that's a big one, because even Rosie said, she's like, I would have never believed it if I hadn't taken it. Never believed it. And then someone on the community recently mentioned, they were like, it's sort of like the red pill, blue pill when you're talking about the Matrix. And I'm like, but I don't want people to think of it that way, because, things weren't so good on the other side. Like,
they really weren't.
The Matrix looked a little better. I'm not gonna lie. If I knew there was a Matrix, I think I'd stay in the real world plugged in. I'm not gonna lie. But
Think so?
I think I would.
I don't
want to eat gruel. Even now on GLP-1s, I don't want to eat that gruel nastiness they eat in that movie. I love that movie. So I love that movie.
Yeah, that nastiness.
Anyway, that's gross. Yeah. And they got plugs in the head. No, I'll have the steak with the guy that,
Yeah, and the glass of red wine.
Yes, I'm gonna hang out with the red wine and the steak and my blissful
ignorance. Unaware of all of this. Yes.
The difference is that it was not blissful before and it is blissful after. So I feel like it's sort of inverted, but it is like that. You don't really realize until you actually have the experience, I wish it was a little different. I wish people could understand a little earlier, so they didn't feel like they had to take it, but it is what it is. All right.
Thing for me with these medications is just total freedom from hating myself. And if I didn't lose another pound, I would still advocate for these medications.
I think ADHD is a little different. There's a number of addictive pathways that GLP-1s also work on. A lot of what Rachel said is true, right? In the dopaminergic pathways of using food as a reward system. GLP-1s can also help with those. So they've been seen to help with alcohol addictions, help with smoking, help with shopping addiction.
At 550 pounds, I was still working 80 hours a week. physically doing a chef's job. And I was, as a chef, if anybody knows,
I just want to say, look how much smaller Jamie's face is now versus
Oh,
the
it totally
days.
is. Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
And he's losing again. He's been losing, still, I don't want to like say his business, you know what I mean? But like, he's on his road to weight loss surgery. That's evident. He talks about it most on his TikToks, but yeah, it is so much smaller, and he has a dimple now. Yeah. He's like, look, it's a dimple. I love it. Yeah.
Look at my insane hair. I don't
like it though. You kind of like, it's sort of like Dr. Myra, where she looks like a mad scientist. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't
She's
mind
just
it.
like,
I'll be
I'm too
Christina
fabulous.
Science.
Yes, it's like
I'll
a
be
mad
Doc.
science hair. Weird science. There you go.
Yeah.
Pop culture reference.
That's it.
Exactly. Or Great Scott.
Great Scott. But purple. Great Scott,
Yeah,
but purple.
exactly. But good props. I mean, bravo,
like
Jamie. Your face
I know.
has
Yeah. It's
snapped.
doing real well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
you don't sit around and eat all
Not at
day,
all.
chef. You're just, it's not what happens. So I know a lot about food. I know a tremendous amount of nutrition. I know how to eat. In the back of your mind, like my son doesn't have a mom anymore. In the back of mind, I don't want him not to have a dad. Also, my 3 little girls. And that's all that stuff. And no matter how much you want to do it, if obesity is a disease, if you don't have the tools to help fight it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you want it. It doesn't matter. You can't will yourself to lose weight.
I think that I'm at the other end of my journey, and so it's easy to forget sometimes that just listening to you talk, Jamie, just reminded me of a lot of things that I've struggled through and I've forgotten it. That's the beauty of it. You get to a certain point where you just sort of forget. And I had one of my doctors tell me once, you're well when you forget you have the diagnosis.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And almost, it's like listening to you, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, JT.
Can I just say, well, you all know I absolutely heart Dr. Catherine Toomer, but that was a moment for me because when I just started to actually see the transformation in the mirror, even though I knew that there were, metabolic changes going on in my body, it's another thing when you see it. And when she said that, it's like you almost forget that you were in that state.
Yeah, I feel like I aspire to that so much. I hope that I get there.
Yeah, it's you will. And it's not that, like, now it seems normal that I can wear jeans in my closet. I don't even think twice about it. Now it's like, oh, okay. But when it first happened, I was utterly amazed. Even there, I was still like, wow, I'm starting to see it. Yeah.
Maybe I'm fine. Yeah. I went into congestive heart failure. That was misdiagnosed as something else, mainly because I was tired. I was having difficulty breathing. Every time I moved around, I was short of breath, and I kept being told it was because of my weight. And so I went undiagnosed much longer than I should have, even though as a physician, I knew something was wrong. I knew it was something more. But the other thing that happens with doctors, and one of the reasons why we don't treat our family members, is that we wish away pathology.
Beth, I am from Birmingham, Alabama, born and raised in the area, and the southern food has always been, we've got a tradition of that, right? And I was born, 10 pounds 6 ounces. Like, I've never in my life been skinny ever. I've never known a normal weight my whole life, and so when I was a little girl, I was diagnosed with a pretty rare hip disease. It's called leg perthes. So I was not able to run or jump or do any kind of weight-bearing exercises from the age of like 4. Tell your 4-year-old not to run and jump until I was about 9 or 10. So I wore leg braces, like the whole thing. And that really, was a hindrance for me personally, that I know that that was something that kind of kickstarted my obesity, the beginnings of it for sure. I have lost since August, my highest weight in August of last year, I have lost almost 80 pounds. Wow, 78 as of
amazing, Beth.
And that to me tells me, like, I finally know what it's like to live in a body that is not actively working against me everywhere I turn. It is so eye-opening to not have that noise, that voice inside your head that's constantly telling you, eat, eat, eat. What are we eating next? When is our next meal?
I remember writing myself out a diet when I was in second grade, and I still have it. And it has the infographics on it and what I was going to eat. And I showed one of my brothers, and he's like, "I'll help you." And I'm like, looking back, I was thinking about this today. In second grade, I was doing this. And I don't think I was really obese until I gained 30 pounds in high school, but I was always the bigger friend. So then that's where I brought in comedy and makeup and doing anything to divert.
Man, do I ever relate with that. So first of all, I love that this is when I was at the beach. And I love that I had a moment there, like during this whole process, where I was in the sand and in the waves and having just an amazing, incredible experience and moment with my child. And I could never do that before. I could never.
Amazing.
And it was just really cool to be able to like be in a moment and live my life. And I feel like that's what I remember having a moment when I was there and going, that's what it's about. That's what it's about, you know? And I totally understand what Lisa's saying here about the funny thing. Like, that's exactly what I did. Like, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be funny. I knew when you're funny, people don't usually pay attention to your physical as much because everybody wants someone funny around, you know? And I did the same thing. It's like a coping mechanism, you know? Anyway, that was just a moment for me. So
I grew up in a big Italian family where food, it's like any culture, right? Where you have a rich culture, food is a big part of it. So it was like, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, happy, sad, any emotion, any celebration, being it happy or sad, food was involved. And then I discovered this amazing community on TikTok and all of you. And I feel like I finally am in a place where I can.
My stupid Mounjaro / Ozempic dupe. Anyway, that was it. I just noticed my name.
Hey, your name on there for listening audience.
Oh
so
my
Kat,
God.
that's when Kat started
that?
like remember you started like changing your changing your like screen name to something like OMG Technology Cat and Mounjaro / Ozempic dupe. Yeah, I remember.
That was that stupid TikTok where lady was like,
that was like, this is an Ozempic dupe. No,
it's gonna
not.
kill your appetite. Ma'am, no. Anyway, that's it.
And people were buying it too.
People were totally buying it.
Really?
I'm gonna put
people have been
celery
sick for a really long time, and that goes back to that lack of accessibility and affordability we always talk about, right? So it's easy to fall back into diet culture and go, okay, that's the thing I need, the dupe. No, dupes don't exist for this, y'all. We wish they did. But things are changing.
Not that level
like we've seen that.
Absolutely
Certainly, this is about halfway through at this point on this episode. So this was the speculating our faces off episode.
It was.
Remember where we all just like give our opinion and ran our mouths and stuff like that. And I don't want to say I told you so, but I did.
I was waiting for that.
She did.
Girl, I'm a Scorpio. You know it was coming. You know
we were waiting because you called it. You said that there was going to be another savings card. There is no way that they were going to leave all of these.
And then there's the e-voucher, the workaround.
Right.
Yep. You don't spend millions of dollars going to market to just drop your patients within 6 months of an approval for the other indication. And that's exactly what happened. They have the e-voucher. Listen, I didn't want to say it.
That's okay. Say it. Say it.
We all know.
Look, say it. Say it.
So I was right.
Trust capitalism, trust greed.
I was right. I called it.
Sometimes I'm wrong. It just wasn't this time.
I'm sorry.
Talk about this stuff, and I can share my experiences. And it's interesting. It's a really interesting field. I've been a part of discussions with these people, and we have the big pharma side. So trust me, I am also a patient. I work in big pharma, but I'm also a patient. So I understand what people are saying about the big pharma side, but I also understand how what those discussions look like with PBMs, and they are gnarly sometimes.
Then as an adult, I was just never good enough. I was never, pretty enough, skinny enough, whatever enough for men in particular. So, I'd gain weight, would be like, hey, you need to do this, that, and the other. It's embarrassing. It's whatever. I would work out all the time. I've done kickboxing. I've done, most recently CrossFit. I've done everything in between: yoga, spin classes, swimming, aerobics, and 5 o'clock in the morning. You name it, I've done it. I've been on every restrictive diet: Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Noom. I started doing like factor meals where I would only eat just like those specific meals and count my calories. I've always logged food to the point where it's become obsessive. Like, it just distracted from my everyday life, and I didn't want to live like that anymore.
It drives me insane when someone will say to me, keep it up.
Right.
Because all I hear when they say that is you are not enough and you haven't done enough yet. And it reminds me of every single time I ever failed before.
This is exciting. I love what you're doing here. I love what you stand for. I love this idea of really what I love the idea of in general is taking the stigma out of the word obesity. I have used it freely in my vernacular with.
Can I just say this episode, all the episodes made my heart jump, but this really made my heart jump because Dave and I, Man on the Mounjaro, actually connected back in like late January, early February of 2023. And I don't even know why I'm like starting to get emotional. And he was one of the first creators that I ever followed to learn about these medications on YouTube. And one day I looked through his description and I emailed him. And I said, you really inspire me. And I thanked him. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing quite yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And he actually responded. And from that point on, I subscribed to his channel. I'm still a subscriber. And you never know who you are affecting. And that man from the Midwest helped this little chocolate girl via YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't even know to drink electrolytes. I mean, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know. And the fact that he volunteered to come on.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, thank you. And it was just so free. So
yeah.
There we go.
And like all he ever does is plug our show. And, he's just like a guy that's just as into this as we are. And he is our forever GLP-1 evangelist.
I know.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, exercise the demons.
Yes. This house is clear. Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
That was a great episode.
But
people
then
who I'm describing my channel with.
Oh, yeah. I see it too. His face.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotten smaller. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Look at your face.
I use it freely on my channel and I use it without shame. It is a chronic condition and it is broken biology. And that is why I became such a big fan of Mounjaro, GLP-1s in general. And that was really the impetus behind me starting my channel. So it's exciting to meet like-minded people. And I felt like I was at this teetering point where I was able to sustain about a year on keto. That was the longest I'd been able to sustain it. And I feel like I was able to sustain it because of that type 2 diagnosis, right? That's a very serious diagnosis to get at my age, with my children being the age they were. And I'm, replaying all the things with my dad dying younger. And so I was really serious, but I was really, really, really frustrated after that year.
It's only in the last several years that we've had tools to help us decrease weight in order to address all those other things.
So here we go. Without further ado, Hey, Rosie.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to our little scrappy podcast.
You know that people like us who've struggled with weight our whole lives are now
Yeah.
so concerned that somebody might notice that our butt is, you know, when you're getting
Smaller.
close to whatever the number is for you, and that you said I will never go over, and you are, you know, at that point, it's just about your health. So I think in my life and career, I've always had a weight issue, especially in Hollywood. When I did League of Their Own, I was like 170 pounds. And I remember Penny Marshall going, I want you to lose 10, 15, or 20 pounds. Can you do it? And I said, well, if I could do it, Penn, I would do it, because nobody likes to be obese. Nobody likes people to say to them, you should lose 20 pounds. Nobody, you don't carry it around for fun. You carry it around for reasons that you don't even fully understand. We just lost the south of France.
We did. She'll be right back, I bet.
Somebody's making her like a brie omelet or something.
Yes.
Oh, she's back and better than ever. Oh, there you are. I was worried about you in the south of France over there.
Right, exactly.
I love that so much. Like, background, guys, like, if you didn't know, like, when we got the interview with Rosie, like, Kat was in Nice, France, and so she had horrible connection, but she was able to make it through the episode with us, because we were like, we can't do this without Kat, you know, we can't believe it. And of course, like, Rosie was like, you want to do it tomorrow? And we're like, yeah, okay, you know. So I remember that, and it was so nice. She was so gracious to offer her time, and the things that she said, and the messages I got after this episode of people being like, I'm weeping, you know, because it was like somebody that you like respect, like saying those things. And she was so vulnerable, like hands down. That was one of the most special moments I think I've had probably in my life.
Her line
Like,
about
legitimately.
the brownie when she was doing the Tonight Show. She's
brownie,
like, I wasn't
yes.
worried about if I'm gonna kill during my set. I wanted that dang brownie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah, because that's food noise.
I
That's why we
felt so
say you can't
seen.
see food noise, right? You can't see it. Yeah.
If you have no side effects and you are not suffering, I'm not suffering at all. I think that this is a miracle drug. But I called my agent after about 4 months on this, and I said, could you call Eli Lilly and tell them that I would be willing to be their spokesperson for free if they would still provide the coupons. I don't even want to be paid. I just want to be able to go out there and say, this will change your life. It's changed mine. And I think back to times in my life, like when I first did the Tonight Show, everybody else backstage was worrying about what they were going to say, what the interview was going to be like. And I was trying not to eat the brownie in the craft service table. I was sitting there not worrying about my first national television experience. I was worrying that I really wanted to eat the brownie and I couldn't. And it was the only thing I thought about before I went out on that stage. Food noise, as people are calling it, had really run my life. And I didn't even know it until I took Mounjaro. So I think this is the way weight loss is moving in terms of health and medically. And I'm really happy and proud that I got to experience for myself just how life-altering it is. And I would love to help in any way.
I was
Like,
the only one that kept it together that day.
I mean, like, Kat and I were like, but you were like, oh, like but you didn't lose it, but your face was like, so, I can't believe she just said that. And I was like,
I was shocked.
On our show. Like, it was like so great.
I was
like,
shocked.
Like,
I mean,
I know, you
literally,
were
I
so
was like,
shocked.
what? What did
Your face. I love it so much. I love it. And the things that she said, like, and like for our listening audience, I mean, I'm sure you know because you're a fan, like, but that was Rosie O'Donnell that came on our show and was incredibly vulnerable and shared all that information. And, you know, like, even though we know there are legalities in place where they couldn't like provide a marketing coupon to market the medication for obesity, like we know there are things like that they couldn't. But the fact that she offered and the things that she said were all to be able to help us feel validated. And she knew exactly what she was saying, exactly what she was doing, and just wanted to help us, you know? And it was just like I think one of the coolest moments that we can all say, because she was just like,
you know what?
Unapologetically herself and just totally understood, you know?
Before we go to the next clip, I
Yeah.
just want to say that Michelle looks like she's in the studio busting out a beat. Like
She
she's
does.
singing.
This is a perfect
Like
pause for
she is
Michelle. We all look
laying,
stupid.
laying out. Like she's just doing a killer verse
She's
right
like,
there.
oh,
Just,
yeah. Love
anyway.
it. Love it.
All right.
I wasn't somebody who was a binge eater. I assumed that I had a problem with food just because of the way I was treated by being obese as a child and overweight and made fun of for my weight. I yo-yoed for so many years. I think I once lost, I want to say 45 pounds. I was 19 and really restricting what I ate and working out excessively. And it was I think I got down to 150-ish pounds, something like that. And it was the first time in my life, I think I was a size 10, which is so wild because I just went below that now. And I'm like, it's still mind blowing to me.
So if I am putting on a size 7, I make up excuses for myself saying like, oh, the only reason I can fit into those is because they're super stretchy. The only reason I can buy a top in a size medium is because it's like looser fitting. Yeah. And I just make up these excuses in my head because I'm like, that's not real. That's like, I guess I don't want to get my hopes up or get this thought in my head that I'm suddenly in these smaller sizes because I just can't believe it. Like I haven't been a size below a size 10 since I don't remember ever buying below a size 10.
But I think I also resented so long people in smaller bodies who didn't have to try, or my friends who could buy smalls and mediums, that it's so weird to all of a sudden think I'm in that category that in a weird way I feel resistant to it.
I did the religious weight loss program called The Way Down. There's actually a documentary about that.
I've seen it.
Where really you're told that your weight gain is a failing of your faith and your spirituality.
Wow.
Yeah, it was definitely a part of that. It was very expensive. I remember, and my mom, I remember her saying you really have to commit to it because it's going to cost a lot of money for you to do. And I really wanted to, but as a 14-year-old, was not really able to white knuckle it as well as I learned later on in life. But so afraid of dealing with it and going to the doctor, and I had just somehow accumulated this big phobia of going to any kind of medical professional. And I started to look in the mirror and pick out something that I liked about myself every day. If it was the fact that I had a perfect shaped nose, or it fits just right when I do this with my fingers, perfect. It's the perfect nose. I love the way my eyelashes flip up in the corners. Little things. I started with the little things. I moved to the bigger things until I could look at myself in the mirror every day, and I stopped seeing things that I hate. Everything that I saw, I loved about myself. Everything. And that is hard for some people to believe, that a person at 350, 375, 380 could look at themselves and say, I don't see a thing wrong with you.
She is so strong and so brave. Out of all of the ones that we've had, I could not keep it together during that interview, especially when she talked about her brother. And I just was like, and that she's a foster mom, and the way that she would just give, and, and what that can do to you. Like if you're always putting so many people above yourself and you never focus on yourself and your weight and what it is that you need to do. That was that was an episode I couldn't, but I hope people saw from that episode that this is a safe place and you can say what you need to say,
Oh, look. Tell us about your heart.
My whole platform is self-love superpower. So self-kindness to your health goals. So thank you for sharing your stories. Of course, I've taken care of so many patients and children over the years. So thank you for sharing. I'm so sorry for your trauma. Self-love superpower to you. Because I bring out my thought rainbow when I'm coaching. So our thoughts are like a rainbow that come and go in the mind.
Right.
You don't have to attach to them. And so a lot of people who grew up struggling with their weight have a lot of past self-beliefs that keep them stuck. And every time you try to take action on a goal for yourself, you go back to that and your mind's like, oh, all the evidence comes up. You can't do it. You're a quitter. And teens have this too.
So I do love that episode too. So for those that don't know, that's Dr. Carla, and that's the
I love
childhood
Dr.
obesity
Carla.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about it a lot as a group. Like, we need to handle this because it's our children, and because this is controversial, regardless of the fact that there's a lot of data to show that this is good. It's still new, right? And it's still our kids, and we needed to make sure that we had all the facts and that we were very, very careful. And I got to tell you, I got nothing but positive feedback on that. So I think that Dr. Carla, with her rainbows and her hearts, were the
thought
perfect
rainbow is so
thing
great,
to
yeah.
be able to talk about in the self-love superpower and talking about the trauma, like, and so much that's considered around that. And like, I also loved how in that episode she talked about like the bias and the issues with the parents who struggled with obesity, right? And then them also getting to where you know, they don't want to like put that shit on their kids. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No
it
doubt.
was and how she helps parents kind of work through that. You know, I thought that was a really good one.
I was in a pretty dark place. I had really given up on my health and my future, and I was in a state of just constant inflammation, constant binge eating. I remember the first day that I took my injection, I actually had sores on the roof of my mouth because I had eaten so many Skittles watching a movie like 2 nights before that. Like, I had sores on the roof of my mouth. I was in such a state of sugar addiction that I was foregoing meals and eating like drumsticks for breakfast because I could justify it, saying it's just the milk is frozen and the cone is like your cereal, but all in one cone. And I'm telling you, I was completely in a sugar addiction. Day 3, I looked at my husband and said, I almost feel lonely today. And he said, what? And I said, I woke up today and I didn't analyze everything that I ate yesterday. And my mind's really quiet. And I haven't felt like this in a really, really long time. And it's very hard to articulate to somebody that has never had food noise or struggled with a binge eating disorder. But I was in such a dark place at the time. This might sound crazy to some people, but I was showering with the lights off because I didn't want my mind to tell me what the reflection showed. Why would God just let me stay this broken? Like,
I apologize for leaving off camera, but I had to get myself together.
Of course.
Because I knew that this episode was coming. And I think you all saw where normally I hold it together. I could not hold it together on this episode. And even still seeing it, and I was just like, nope. And yeah. So that's why my camera, the screen.
Yeah, of course. And for like those who haven't seen it, JT, I know you had some moments there. Can you tell people who haven't seen it, like, what was happening?
Yeah. So briefly, Lisa, who's a beloved member of the Mounjaro community, GLP-1 community, has, and you'll see this on the episode, has a disorder where Mounjaro just almost alleviated all of it. And I think maybe she had only had like 2 occurrences of this disorder. And she explained to us that her A1C was actually, I think, a 6.9. And her insurance company said, well, your A1C has to be a 7 to get coverage with Mounjaro.
They said she'd taken it too soon.
Yeah.
Looks like you took it too soon.
Yeah. And you took it too soon, and we have a budget, and but I'm like, wait a minute. But the American Diabetes Association, the CDC says that type 2 is 6.5. You are a type 2 diabetic. Why aren't you getting coverage? And just her vulnerability in terms of not just her medical state, but of her emotional state, and where her relationship with God was, and how she felt it was her fault. And it was and it still is very emotional.
Yeah. I the same thing for me too. Like we had some good talks about faith, I feel like, on that one. And everybody has their own faith and their own religious and however they do things, and that's cool. Like we see it all here, and that's okay. But like I think just seeing like her feel like, and we've all sort of felt like it's our fault, but her thinking it was like an affliction that God gave her, or affliction that God would not heal her for. Like God would not, maybe she wasn't faithful enough and stuff like that. And like that killed me. I was just like, that gutted me. I'm surprised I kept it together at all, to be honest. Like it was really intense.
Yeah.
But I feel like other people definitely felt that way somewhere, somehow,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like to the point I was not showing up for my family. I was not going to the 4th of July parade because I didn't want my picture taken with my family. Like, why?
We only have about 7,000 doctors out of 1 million in the United States who are board certified in the field of obesity medicine. When I trained not that long ago, 15 years ago, we didn't get a single lecture on what to do about weight. And that's actually how I came to this field, because I would be in my internal medicine clinics treating end-stage type 2 diabetes, heart disease, have people maxed out on high blood pressure meds. And they would say, well, counsel them on weight loss. And you'd be like, well, how? Like, I come from a family who all of the women struggled with weight. And so we talked about weight loss nonstop. I luckily grew up with a healthy relationship with food, but it was like, what's the newest Weight Watcher point technique? Like that, this is literally what we did every weekend, beginning that it's not just type 2 diabetes. There's like a root to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome that predates it. And I don't think that most people know that. So people think that fat is the main thing that we're treating. And actually, it is so much bigger than that. Fat is an annoyance, but it's both the secondary endpoint to metabolic dysfunction, and then it creates more about metabolic dysfunction.
And I'm like, okay.
Like that one was a big one, right? Like that was when I started looking at things more like when I started hearing those like sort of like cues in my head, like, metabolic disorders and like that sort of being that underlying dysfunction. And that can look like a lot of different things, and like the whole idea of like the proactive healthcare. And that's when I started being like, I need to check my bias and start turning the wheels. You know what I mean? I need to start. That was a good one for me. I love Dr. Soa. She's fantastic.
I'll try whatever you want me to try. Just let me try it again. Done the Weight Watchers, the Jenny Craig's, the everything, and just white knuckles it, and can never lose but 20 pounds and then gain it back, right? And it just kept being like a slap in the face, a slap in the face, a slap in the face. And so last summer, I started hearing about Mounjaro and Ozempic on TikTok. And I was like, what am I gonna, like, this sounds amazing. And I'm like, is it real, or is this something else I'm gonna fail at?
Not fully my identity, but a bit.
Okay. So that was sort of the end of it. Now, that being said, like there's obviously quite a bit more. And we will have bonus content on the YouTube channel for our paid subscribers to be able to see more if you want to, just sort of like the montage of everything. But I mean, that sums up a good bit of the season. And then we started the lives on YouTube so we could have people have more opportunity to take the space, and tell. And I know like there are sometimes like, oh, it's a long form content because people, especially like our audience from TikTok, it's like, but this is long form content, right? Like it's great that we have TikTok where you can get things in 3 minutes or 10 minutes, but like these are the whole point is that this is incredibly complicated and it's way more than a 10-minute discussion,
Yeah.
And so, but you know, people can come and people do, and they go, you know what, like, I just kind of want to hear this part. But what I am finding more than anything is that when people come, they come back. They'll start and they'll go, all right, like you do with a podcast, right? Like when you're driving, you come back and you listen to it again in a couple hours or the next morning or whatever, because, you know, a lot of it is so valuable. So
Yeah.
I think it's been a super good season. I don't think we'll do 24 episodes in a season from now. Maybe we'll do 12, but I don't think we knew where this was going or like how much content we were going to have, but like we can have this conversation forever. You know what I mean?
Over and over. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other special moments you guys remember?
I think for me, just as the season went on, even more studies were confirming what we knew and what we were experiencing and what we were feeling. And just the validation, just the confirmation that no, you're not crazy. This is really happening. That was even more of a highlight, because I think that we said we feel like we truly are living in medical history. We were able to be on Mounjaro the first year of it being out on the market.
Yeah.
Totally.
So yeah,
we're almost like the guinea pigs.
We definitely are the guinea pigs. But that's the thing is, like, if you are at a certain level of illness, right? And there's so much data to show this is probably really good for you. You decide if the risk is versus reward. And we say that a lot in our lives, right? Like, is it, you know?
Right.
But this has been a good looking back, and we have several episodes recently that are obviously not in this montage. But again, we'll have more. So if you're just kind of wanting to get caught up and like see, you know, the different things that we talked about and the changes in our faces and hair.
My goodness.
In such a short amount of time. Like, it really is interesting. And like how dark my room used to be until I got lights in here.
I know.
Like,
and I had just moved into my house when we started.
That's
so
right. That's right.
Coming together.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's been great. And, you know, even though it sounds like we're about to end, this is just the first half of our finale. And now the next half is looking forward. So we're going to talk with Dr. Michael Albert, because he started with us on the podcast to explain so much about the differences and the similarities between type 2 diabetes and obesity. And that we had a lot of aha moments in that, you know what I mean? And we don't have the clips of that because there was technical difficulties. And I don't have the clips because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. You know, I'm still not really sure. But yeah, so that's what's coming up next. But just before we do that, we want to make sure we thank our sponsor, which is iBeam Health, and make sure that if you are interested, know that you get the first month free if you come from the plus sides. Okay. So let's move on to half 2. And it's been a great first season. I can't wait to see you guys for season 2. We do have a special surprise. Make sure you subscribe.
Thank you, everybody.
That's all. Thank you. We gathered here today. We're so glad to have you. We're coming on with us. So you'll see obviously the first half that we recorded together, where we go over, you know, the over the past 23 episodes and what that's been like, and the stories, and, you know, all of the learnings that we've had to be able to understand, you know, our diseases, and be able to understand our disorders and how these medications can help treat and change our lives. So from there, though, we thought that since we started with Dr. Michael Albert, we should end with Dr. Michael Albert. So we're going to invite him on. And we're so excited to have you. Hey, Dr. Albert, how you doing?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here. You know, the first part of our episode talking about, you know, all those things I just mentioned, you know, it's all very heartfelt for us. You know, it means so much to us. And I think what's important is, even though we're looking back, I think we have to understand that there's so much to look forward to. And even with the bumps in the road that we've seen, you know, with everything changing with insurance, and people getting, you know, letters sent to them and telling them not to prescribe medications off label, and just all the things that seem to bring us down, then it's like, we'll turn around and we'll hear that Wegovy is like the best treatment for, you know, possible heart disease. Or we'll hear, oh, hey, actually there was a formulary change for a national formulary, and it's going to be, Mounjaro is going to be on all of that. And it's like, the minute that we're down, I feel like we also get a step forward, and then sometimes we get 2 steps back. But I think that we're kind of in the middle of this. Like, at the beginning, I thought, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. But truthfully, we have several medications in this class that are very beneficial. And we've learned that from you and many of the other doctors in our community. So that being said, there may be some people that are just joining for the first time on the finale. Where you been? We've been 23 episodes in. Where you been? Where you at? Luckily, you don't have to listen to our intros because we're in the middle. But I want to make sure that we have people understand like who you are, what your background is, and like how do you help people?
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks again for having me. My background. So I'm a physician by training. My background's in internal medicine. I've gone on to specialize further in obesity medicine. I have a background in digital health, this fancy thing of utilizing technology to improve the lives of people, particularly their health. And I'm currently one of the founders of a medical clinic called Accomplish Health, where we specialize in helping people manage their weight. And we do this completely through the internet. So there's no in-person presence. We use this thing called the internet, which is pretty remarkable. And, we're really excited because we continue to grow. And so, I know we all connected via some of this internet stuff. And so, I dabble in social media as well, sort of on the side, but that's the brief on me.
Just dabble. We will be listing all
They're a
of
lot
your
of fun too.
your social links. Oh, they're the best. They're
Yes.
the
That
best.
one that you just posted recently of an Ozempic in a pill form, and you were like, no. Anyway, we'll
It's
get
the
into
best.
that.
The funny ones, like I love the ones where we learn, but the funny ones, I live for the funny ones. Like I
Oh,
live for the
gosh.
ones where you're doing
I'm
little
so
things and you're
goofy. Yeah.
saluting the savings card, and it's the best. You are goofy. It's the best. But I mean, clearly, you're in good company. We're all goofy too. So
Wonderful.
you'll be a part of the plus size family. What can we say? So that's super good to know. And we'll make sure that we link Accomplish Health too, because I will tell you, key differentiator for Accomplish Health is one of the coolest things is that they take insurance and they're a network with several insurance companies, and there are a lot of different states as well. So it's definitely something to look into, and they even help if you have Medicare. So I think that's a really cool. It's very special. So anyway, let's move on. So we talked about on the first episode, because I remember when so with JT being a type 2 and us not yet, thank you Jesus, we were trying to understand this whole insulin resistance spectrum, if you will, and you made a lot of comments around like kind of the commonalities between type 2 diabetes and obesity and pre-diabetes, and kind of like explain that for us. And I remember us going, oh my God, like that makes so much more sense. But since we have people who may not have heard that, could you maybe recap how they are like and how they are different for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, so I'll try to do my best to simplify it. But
in a 3-minute TikTok, this is your assignment.
I think the best way to frame how they're related, type 2 diabetes and obesity, is to think about how people are able to manage fat tissue, right? So obesity on some level is having excess adipose tissue or fat tissue that exceeds sort of what your body can manage, right? And that's when we see a lot of the health consequences related to obesity. Diabetes on some level also is related to the body's ability to manage energy and fat and to handle that capacity. And we start to see things like insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, which we know to be part of this sort of pathologic pathway towards type 2 diabetes when the body is not capable of handling energy anymore. And so I think that there is this energy management overlap that is in many ways how they're related, and then how they're different. Type 2 diabetes fundamentally is a disorder where certain cells in the pancreas that secrete insulin, the beta cells, start to fail. And some of that failure can be brought on by the body's inability to manage energy, and specifically by the transplantation of fat from the typical locations into areas where it can be problematic for organ health and can facilitate pancreatic destruction, really. So type 2 diabetes, I don't think that this gets mentioned enough. Type 2 diabetes on some level is a disorder of organ failure, of what we call endocrine pancreatic failure. And I think if we viewed it through that lens, I think there would be greater urgency by which we try to prevent it, whether it's at the level of prediabetes or even early insulin resistance. And I think often, as I see, unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues, it's a very sort of hands off, well, it's not so high. It's like, keep working on it. It's like, no, we should be raising the alarm earlier because we want to prevent, if we can, organ damage and organ failure. So that's the summary I can give. That's sort of the 2-3 minute summary.
No, it's pretty good. Lots of TikTok practice. I love it. That made so much sense. Yeah, God, I never even thought about that way before. It's basically like a type of organ failure.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of urgency, I love that. You always say things so smart. Okay. Hey, Kat, I'm sorry. I know you had a question.
You're
I know I
fine.
get
Yeah.
silly.
So you touched on like different types of obesity on your TikTok, which was very fascinating. But so I'm going to ask you to expand it beyond the 3 minutes. So we're told obesity is genetic, right? But can you explain the different types of obesity for us?
Yeah, and the genetic component is important to understand that there are variants of genes, right? That you inherit. You get them from your parents. You get one copy from your mom, one copy from your dad. And these genes can sort of set the stage for obesity to develop. We know that most cases of obesity, so the most common forms of obesity are what are known as polygenic obesity, meaning a number of genes working in concert with different environmental interactions help bring about this disease. And that's the most common form. If you can imagine, there's so many different variants. We can talk about the different kinds, but there's so many different variants that not one is like the other. And so that's really important to understand because that's real implications both in how someone presents, their risks, and as well how they'll respond to certain treatments. And so that's I often talk to patients about, listen, your form is not necessarily the same as your friends, or you're probably closer to a sibling or a parent in terms of the form of disease than anyone else. And we need to understand, one, there can be insights there, and then two, that you have to take anything else someone else says with a little bit of grain of salt because you're different. So that first form, the polygenic obesity, is the most common form that we see. More rare forms of obesity that are based on single gene mutations or single gene variants, we refer to as monogenic obesity, mono being one gene, genic being gene, right? You can also see sort of a subcategory of that known as syndromic obesities that typically manifest in people that have congenital disorders. One of the classic ones for syndromic obesity is Bardet-Biedl syndrome. And these types of congenital disorders that have obesity as one of the manifestations can be a single gene variation, or it can be what we call oligogenic, multiple genes. So there are a number of these syndromic forms of obesity. There are a number, and we're discovering more by the year, these forms of single gene obesity. And then far and away, the most common are these multi-gene forms of obesity. And so understanding, because one treatment, especially if you have a single gene issue, there are treatments dedicated specifically to that. Imcivree, setmelanotide, is the only one that's FDA approved to date, and there are more that are in development. But those are very different treatment considerations than someone who is maybe looking to have generalized obesity help because they have what is referred to as a polygenic form of obesity.
Wow.
That's
That's amazing. Thank you.
interesting. I love learning from you. And
Me too.
speaking of, so I know, right? The last time we talked to you, you gave us a lot of really great resources for people who are like looking for a place to start with obesity specialists. Besides going to Accomplish Health, um, so a lot of our community still doesn't know, or they're not sure where to start. And you had a wealth of knowledge and a lot of resources. And could you share that again for our listeners?
Yeah. So I think, listen, the reality is this is a huge problem, right? There are a lot of people that are touched by this. And so it's an all hands on deck, whether it's patients, family, friends, community, society, healthcare workers. And so many people, their first interaction will be with the doctor they have the most time with, which is often the primary care doctor. And I think that is a great place to start for a lot of people, as an increasing number of primary care doctors are at least becoming more comfortable having these conversations or entertaining the medications because they finally have heard about them, like many of you all, or have read the studies finally. And so I think that's a wonderful place to start, and can be an entryway for a lot of people. If you are not seeing the type of health improvements, or you have maybe a more advanced form of obesity with numerous complications, then someone like an obesity specialist like myself, who focuses primarily on treating obesity and weight-related issues, might be a better place to start then, or might be the sort of next step in line if you're not seeing the results you need to see with your primary care doctor. And so you can find someone like myself. There are a number of various databases that have this information. The Obesity Action Coalition, which is the largest patient advocacy and education organization in the US, they have an entire database that you can search by state, region, zip code, insurance coverage, whatever. They have it there. And then the American Board of Obesity Medicine, the ABOM, abom.org is another great place to go. They have the directory on all the American Board of Obesity Medicine certified physicians, so obesity medicine specialists like myself. And you might ask, well, why is that different? I'm actually a primary care specialist by training. Why would I be different than a primary care doctor? Well, I think the evidence is pretty clear. They've studied it, that people who have this additional specialization, certification, or who have undergone an obesity medicine fellowship generally practice more evidence-based, more state-of-the-art medicine. And usually their practices also have additional resources and support because this is something they do and focus on and specialize in. So that's where, if you are someone who has struggled, who has not gotten the type of help you need, or who has significant health issues, an obesity medicine specialist might be a great person to talk to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think even everybody's journey looks a little different, but like for me, I started at my doctor, we did blood work, and she was like, and I honestly did not know what I was doing. And I wish, looking back, that I had asked more questions, but honestly, I didn't learn to start advocating for my health or myself until I went through this process, and I think that I was losing weight and I was successful, but I was really, my mind and like the mental part of it was really trying to catch up with my body, and the issues around emotional eating, and it just kind of going away all of a sudden and not knowing what to do with it. And I thought, I really need people that understand this, and I think that it was that next sort of level that I needed, and like, not just like, am I eating less? Like, what am I eating? And when am I eating? And why am I eating? And, is that what's best for my body? Is that, and for my mind and my experience? And I think that that is a really big difference in having an obesity specialist look after you so far. And I've just heard plenty of people be like, no, like, it's cool. Like, my GP does it. But then I hear a lot of people say, my GP's got 10 minutes with me, and they can't sit down and help me unwind all that stuff, and I think that it does seem like the obesity specialists have more, more time. And I think that's true really with a lot of specialties in medicine in my experience, but yeah, I mean, was it Kat, do you see an obesity specialist?
I don't actually see my personal,
GP?
PCP. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great option for a lot of people. So, I mean, I think everyone has to find the right fit for them.
Right.
Some people have tremendous relationships with their PCP, and have these very collaborative therapeutic relationships. Other people, like I see, have more advanced disease, and it's very overwhelming for a PCP to try to take on. And so someone like myself can be a very good collaborator for the overall care team in that regard, and be able to help address a lot of things like you guys mentioned in a way that gives us more time. And I build my practice that way too, so we have more time to really focus, because often, it does take really getting to know each other to be able to make those meaningful insights, create those meaningful insights so that people can really get better.
Yeah,
I totally get
so.
it. I feel like, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kat. Go ahead.
My PCP, this is the first relationship I've actually had with the doctor, because I had one, many, many times before, and I always felt dismissed and, just brushed off. But I think the reason why, like, I really have stayed with her is because I feel seen. And she
Big time.
is, studied up a little bit on this. So if I felt like I had to go to another, like to an obesity specialist, then I would. But in this instance of all these years, finally, like right now, it feels right. Feels okay, but I totally get it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you found that. I think that's such a big deal. I think for me too, I've been very doctor averse and went too long without going to the doctor, and luckily not so long that I was type 2, but I went too long, and I just want people to talk to their doctor and realize that there's care out there. And that's one of the things we try to do here. Right. Dr. Albert, I feel like I've seen and heard a lot of things lately around sort of the future of obesity medicine. And I know we've, been hearing a lot about Retatrutide, right? And like the advancements with that and what that means. And I'd love to go into that too. But you also recently did a TikTok that like kind of blew my mind and like definitely left me wanting to know more because you know how I am. But when you were specifically talking about one of the studies that showed that there could possibly be a single treatment to treat obesity like in the future. And I'm like, don't just be holding that back now. Like, we need to know more about that. So, could you go into those couple things for us? Because I know people are wanting to know.
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of give a preview for what's to come.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, when we look at the development pipeline for new obesity therapeutics, primarily it follows this framework of a number of hormone-based medications. They act on different hormones. And most of these hormones, for people to understand, they're based on copycat versions that are analogous to hormones our body naturally produces. And so there's three primary hormones that most of the new drugs are based around. One many people are familiar with, and that is GLP-1. Another one that many people are getting to know because of Mounjaro, aka tirzepatide, is GIP. And the last one is glucagon, which is fairly new. And so what you're seeing with all the new drugs in development that are in phase 2 and phase 3 study are combinations of these three hormones. Retatrutide happens to be the first triple agonist. So it actually activates the receptors for these three various hormones. And that's really the novelty around Retatrutide and why we believe that at least the early clinical trials suggest pretty remarkable both reductions in weight as well as improvements in things like blood sugar, fatty liver disease, and a range of other considerations. One of the other things I would bring to people's attention is that a number of companies are working on non-peptides. So all the hormone therapies that you guys are familiar with that are these gut hormone analogs, as we call them, or synthetic versions, they are all based on peptides. So they are strings of amino acid. Because of that, they're actually very difficult to manufacture. They have all of these very particular manufacturing needs, and a lot of them have to be cold stored, which is part of the reason why it's so hard to increase the supplies around these drugs and why we have some of the supply demand issues that we currently are experiencing. A number of companies have found a way to create a non-peptide GLP-1 agonist. And so that I'm super excited about because you can almost infinitely scale those. And these are things that if you guys look for them, they end in PRONS, prawns. Prawns, kind of like the crustacean. So or florglipron and danuglipron, all these weird prawns, these will be coming in the pipeline, these non-peptide oral GLP-1 therapies. There are a bunch of other ones that combine GLP-1 and glucagon and GLP-1 and just GIP. But that is sort of the overview of the future development. Most drugs in development right now are some combination of these hormones. You had also asked me about this new gene therapy. So we don't know much about it. So I do have to heavily caveat that. So a company called it's super exciting. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, the innovation is, I feel like we are in sort of the golden era of medicine on some level with some of these new treatments. But basically what this company suggests is that they've taken an adenovirus vector. So basically they've modified a virus that is common in the community, and they've put a gene inside of it, and they have this proprietary delivery system that will drop the gene off in the pancreas. And they believe or suggest that they can ameliorate most of type 2 diabetes, if not completely wipe it out. And also, because of the way it changes the pancreatic function, may very well be an effective obesity treatment as well. And so their early studies, which have been primarily done in rodents, suggested like a 54% reduction in glucose compared to semaglutide, and a 20% reduction in body weight compared to semaglutide, showing that this is sort of an evolution on what's potentially possible. It's early days, and so they need to prove it out in humans, not just in animals. And we need to see what kind of results we get from those. But actually, the animal studies, the rodent studies, when you look at them historically, they seem to align with what you would expect in humans. So the drugs that cause the most health benefit in rodents, as it relates to these metabolic type drugs, these obesity, diabetes drugs, also seem to be the most potent in humans. So it becomes fairly predictable. And from that perspective, it's really exciting.
That is fascinating.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a whole lot.
Gosh, I can't wait to hear all about that. I'm
We'll hear
such
it
a
all from
nerd.
Dr. Albert's
I wasn't even
TikTok.
good at science. I didn't even really like it. I mean, but I'm just like fascinated by all this. I just like clearly. Sorry, JT, I didn't get a question. Didn't mean to nerd out on you.
Yeah, Dr. Albert, we've talked about this before, and you were gracious enough to talk about it on your live. But in terms of maintenance, I think I'm the only one as of right now, and we're just putting it out there that Kim and Kat are on their way to maintenance.
Sure.
But we've seen many patients encounter issues with maintenance, and that's become a really hot topic. So some can't stop losing weight, and they're like, what do I do? So they keep titrating down. Others choose to space out the injections and inject every 10 to 14 days. So though these medications have been around for years, it seems like maintenance is a big unknown. So as an obesity specialist, what has your experience been like treating patients on maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, I think you you kind of alluded to it, is that there is not a lot of really good data to guide us. And so it's based a lot on experience and then what little data we have available. So I think ultimately, this is going to be a decision between patient and provider, but hopefully it's something that is very individualized based on the context. And I think you described different contexts by which you might choose to go a different direction than another. And so I think individualized approaches are going to be critical when we don't have great data. And then in terms of how I approach it, I'm sort of old school. I'm like very by the data. So like I try to stick as close to what data we do have and not try to do things that don't have great data. And so I may be less sort of exciting in that I don't really push the envelope that way. And the data we have at this time suggests people that get to the target doses, if you stay on the target dose, it seems to be pretty durable in terms of the level of disease treatment.
Yeah.
If you go from being 100% to 0%, meaning you come off the medication completely, you can expect the disease to worsen. And we don't know if it goes back to where it does over time, if there's some legacy effect wherein people can maintain some degree of the health benefit, but there does appear to be some amount of disease recurrence, and with it, weight recurrence. And so, I operate from that framework, and at the end of the day, I still personalize it to my patient's needs. Some people worry about accessibility to meds, and so we do some different things. But I think ultimately, we operate with the best information we have. We try to help the person in front of us, which is super critical. And we do the best we can. And so I think that it's an area that needs a lot more study. I'm hoping a lot more, a greater number of researchers will take interest in this because it has huge clinical translational implications, right? Because everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
And but until then, do the best you can given the circumstances, and that'll be good enough for a lot of people.
I think it's fascinating too, like So our next episode, we talk about addiction. And so we have an addiction specialist on, and then Brenda, who struggled with dependence on alcohol and food. And she took, I don't know if you follow her in our community, but she took Mounjaro for like 11 months. Amazing. Totally changed her lifestyle and everything, like the what she eats in a day and the cooks and the things that she did. It's incredible. And she had to stop it because she started out with some heart rate issues. I'm oversimplifying. And then they progressed as she went up on the medication, and just for safety purposes, they just went ahead and took her off it. And she's been 3 months now, and she's still losing. She's kept up her lifestyle. She's and so like that gives me hope for things like use cases. I'm in tech, use cases like this, right? So like if we're going to be like studying an addiction, and yes, obesity is part of it, right? But if it's able to target that, and then they're able to put people's body and minds in a place where they can then receive and then make those behavior changes, like what is possible? Because I have such hope. Alcoholism runs my family. I don't have a problem with it, but like it does. And I know there are a lot of people where that's also something that they deal with. So I hope that we get to a place where that will be possible. So I'm fascinated to see how those studies, come out. But one thing I wanted to ask about what JT said is, in terms of people that are spacing them out 1 to 2 weeks, do we know anything about what the effects that is to go down low on a dose and have your body like start to decrease in response and then going back up and then going down? Do we know anything about that? Because
I mean, it hasn't been studied directly, so I would
Yeah.
say generally no.
Okay.
But just from paradigms with other drugs, this medication doesn't, at least from what we can tell, doesn't have a withdrawal effect. So from a physiology standpoint, it shouldn't be that problematic. You're just
Okay.
going to be losing drug over time, right?
Okay.
Because the drug is being metabolized and towards the next injection, if you're spacing out that far, you're going to have very little, if any, drug left in your system. And so the question is, can you still achieve a level of disease control with that type of dosing frequency? And the question is, we don't know because it hasn't been studied.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, JT. Thanks.
No. No.
Right.
I'm like nerding out over here too. So because I mean, but
If 20-year-old me could see me right now, she'd be like, "What are you doing?"
I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh.
You were gonna be a singer. What you doing?
What are you doing talking about glucagons and all of this? But
Very important.
Sorry. It's the finale, y'all. Applause.
Very important stuff. It is, yeah.
Go ahead, JT. I'm
It
sorry.
is. And you're fine. You all are fine. And Dr. Albert, really quick, just talking about maintenance. We have seen people in the community who have now maybe like reset their weight loss goals, and they were in maintenance. So now what they've done is they've gone and started back at like ground zero at 2.5, and now they're titrating up. Is like that, if you're in maintenance and let's just say you need to tweak your weight loss range or weight loss goal to start back at 2.5 and then titrate back up, if your maintenance dose is, let's just say 7.5 or 10?
I guess it's not entirely clear to me what are they trying to do. So they got to 7.5. I mean, because we're doing a hypothetical here. They got to 7.5 and then they stopped it at some point in time.
Yeah, they let's just say they reached their weight loss goal.
Okay.
And now they're tweaking the goal and maybe saying, hey, I may want to lose a little bit more. So they're starting back at 2.5 milligrams and titrating back up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first off,
Because the goal is different. Okay.
I think, obviously it depends on the individual and sort of what their doctor and them discuss. But I think the point is, if you look at how these drugs work, the weight effects, the blood sugar lowering effects are dose dependent. So if you are wanting to get, if you are wanting to lose more weight because it would benefit your health, generally speaking, you have to increase the dose or increase the potency. And that is because the drug achieves higher concentrations in the target tissues at a given dose. So as I always talk to people, because this gets brought up a lot in my community and then with patients, the effect of the drug is dose dependent, not time dependent. So people often think, well, if I stay on a dose longer, will I lose more? Will I have more benefit? No, you'll settle out where you'll settle out, after some amount of time, right? And so for you to have any more of a response, it would be related to the dose, not necessarily related to staying on a particular dose any longer. So that's an important part of the discussion. I don't know, a lot of doctors know that, but it's an important discussion point with your doctor is if you think you should lose more weight for whatever that reason is, you really should be talking about dose, not talking about some other consideration.
So, like with these medicines, sometimes I know people will get to the end. Like that's something that happened with me with Wegovy. Now, obviously, like there's variables. There could be things that were changing there. I had a lot of stress that was going on. But I just quit losing, but I still felt the effects of the medicine, still the reduction of anxiety, still, but wasn't losing anymore. And if anything, I actually think it was more difficult to get my calories in, and I'm wondering if that's the case. So when I did switch to Mounjaro and get that sort of, I think I've been able to eat more, and I feel like I've been able to lose more, if that makes sense, because of it. And I know they say a lot of times like it's the side effect profile is a little kinder. But I guess what I'm curious about is it if I had just is what you're saying? So make sure I understand. Is what you're saying that if I had stayed on 2.4, like what I was going to lose is what I was going to lose on that medication, like even if it was a year from now, like, but it's not necessarily that I would like not being responding it to anymore because my body's getting used to it, but just because that's it, like that's where I was going to go with it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I would. Sometimes it's easier to use an analogy to understand because I think that understanding weight, because there's so many different factors that end up deciding where someone's weight will be. It's a little bit hard to wrap your head around. So I often use the blood pressure analogy. If you take a certain blood pressure medicine, you can expect that your blood pressure will lower by a certain amount, right? Your blood pressure is not going to lower beyond that amount unless you do things that will, compound that effect, like increasing your exercise or, doing whatever else that has a blood pressure lowering effect. Same is true with these medicines, right? There is a biological limit to their effect for a given dose. And for you to have any more clinical benefit, you would have to change some aspect of this sort of equation, right? You would have to modify your diet some way. You would have to increase the dose of the medicine, so on and so forth. So people can think about it as for a given dose for you as an individual, there will be a limit to its effects. And what's important to understand about this is it doesn't mean that the drug is not working. It's just that your body is not dynamically changing. So you often don't experience, and I use the car on the highway analogy to really illustrate that. It's as if you are at your cruising rate. And so it often, when you're in cruise control at the cruising rate on the freeway or the highway, you often don't feel like you're moving at all, right? And that has to do with the way physics work. But when you are accelerating, even if you're at a lower speed, you're accelerating onto the freeway or the highway, you often feel the acceleration, right? It throws you back in your seat, all of that. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to the medicine. The medicine is dynamically working till you get to that new steady state. And at that steady state, it may feel like it's not working, but it still is. It has helped lower the anxiety. It has helped you reduce your weight to that level, right? That is an active process. It just is not changing, right? Things are not changing. So it feels as if the medicine is not working.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that analogy. That was a good one. Thanks, Dr. Albert. Sorry, Gigi, go ahead. I love you guys. Thank you for being kind to me.
Kind of just pushes into it. It goes right. It's a good flow into your question, JT.
Oh, look, what? Okay. I'm sorry.
I know it's late there in London.
London, right?
No. It's just that the Wi-Fi is better, but it's still somewhat like iffy. So excuse me, but I have a question here, and I think this is my last question. So let's hit on something a lot of people go through, and I may be reaching this, which is a plateau. So what discussions do you have to help patients stay focused, this outside of the spectrum of checking diet or dosage? And how can we keep things in perspective that walk that road or run up that hill? What would coach, Dr. Albert say, like a person to me who's going between 157 and 160, and I just keep vacillating between those pounds in that range?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of the mindset stuff, right? Because that's kind of what you're alluding to, right? Outside of this sort of active interventions, what kind of mindset speak do I go through with patients when they may be hitting plateaus or maybe frustrated by the sort of journey they're on? I think one of the things that's really helpful is to kind of ground yourself, right? So I often talk to people, most people didn't get to this state of health in a short time, right? So you shouldn't expect your body to change on a dime. But I know society has conditioned us to believe that you can get fit in 30 days, right? Or, as I always call it, it's sort of the Amazon conditioning, right? Everything happens quickly, instantaneously. And even when we don't actively process things that way, we're still subconsciously processing or anticipating them to occur shortly.
Yeah.
So I think having that perspective that it will take time and it takes longer to lose an additional pound, the farther you get away from where your prior weight was. And that has to do with the dynamic compensation that the body goes through to really prevent you from losing weight, which is a whole nother topic for another time. But and then I talked.
Ooh.
Yeah, that one's the rat that we could go down that rabbit hole plenty. But
okay.
The pillars
No,
of
and then we.
mental health. Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
That's what I always think of. I always think of all the pillars of mental health that get you through it, like not just the diet and exercise, but like, are you reaching out to your community? Are you working on your goals? Are you reading? Are you, if you're doing this, if you're talking to your therapist, things like that, it does help everything stay on cruise control, right? So, yeah.
Yeah,
I feel that that's
absolutely.
important.
No, I mean, it needs to be done holistically for sure.
Yep.
And I think
Mhm.
sometimes there are areas to improve or optimize that we're not always considering. And I think those are always worthy of sort of reviewing, how are you doing on your sleep? How are you doing managing your stress and your overall wellness, whether it's your mental or emotional health? I mean, those are relevant for sure. And oftentimes there are things we could be doing. Those are hard too. And I get that, like, we do the best we can. The last few things I would say as people are in this journey is I don't love results oriented goals. And what I mean by that is like, I'm getting to this number or I'm trying to do this thing. I love process oriented goals because it really puts the focus on something very tangible that you can affect. And when you think about it, managing your weight is a lifelong endeavor. It never stops. Doesn't stop when you get to a certain number. Never stops, right? And if that's something you value, whether it's some health aspect of that journey, then really the focus should be on the journey, not the sort of destination. And I think what people will find is when they shift to more process oriented thinking, that the results end up taking care of themselves. And so I think that mindset change is really helpful too as you go through the process. Like, make it easy for yourself, break it apart. What is something I can work on this week? As opposed to saying, oh, I have to get to this number and I'm still 20 pounds away from my goal. And, it can be very daunting and oftentimes not very helpful. So, I think all of that is relevant. And then one of my favorite lines that I always tell, you guys and other people sort of in the community is like, you have to be careful with comparisons because it's like, I was watching that video and this person lost 100 pounds on Mounjaro or Duma. And, comparison is the thief of joy. The only person that you're competing with is yourself.
It's
right?
you.
You're
Yeah.
looking in the mirror every day. You're going to bed with yourself. You're the one who drives your satisfaction, your happiness, what you value, what's important to you. You're not doing it for anyone but yourself. And so I think keeping that perspective as well throughout this process and centering yourself in some of those principles, I think really help. And No, it's not everything, but it's something. I think that's important.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, that is so great that you said that, but I think that we hear, Kat and Kim and I hear, and I know you probably do too, in the community, well, I just took my first or my second injection of 2.5 and I don't have appetite suppression yet, or what am I doing wrong, or why is it working? And the comparison of, well, how much should I expect to lose? And it's very disheartening to hear. And it's just like when
See, I
people,
think it makes total sense though. It's diet culture. It's just like if
yeah,
you were to take phentermine,
it's just like they're just
you
like
know, that's how you think.
spazzing out, and it's just like, whoa, stop,
Yeah.
breathe. And but I know it's easier said than done, but when you have so many people that have that thought process, when you do tell them enjoy the process, don't compare yourselves to others, is that just so deep seated and deep rooted that that's
I
like
think so.
beyond,
And all
you
of
know,
us. Yeah.
telling people don't, you know, hey, don't compare yourselves, but it just seems like there's so much, I don't know if it's apprehension or fear.
Yeah.
I don't know, fear of failure. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's just something that I've just noticed. And I'm not saying that I'm above it, because trust me, I'm not. But it's just that you just kind of observe things, especially in lives, especially with a lot of the community. And it's like, what else can you say, or what else can you do to like help them along the way, so it's not so fear-based, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's baked into our culture. It's baked into society, this sort of comparison culture. And, you know, I've just seen it too many times. When your purpose is driven by external validation, you're always searching, right? You're never content. And I think that that is so problematic, because if you're really trying to help yourself, you know,
that part,
you can only help you. I mean, really. And I think that this is where having a collaborator, whether it's coach, a physician, whoever it is, where you have that sort of really more intimate network of people that you can work with on your journey, is super helpful. That's not to say that people in the community can't be helpful and give insights, but I think to have someone that can help you stay grounded and accountable, and sort of who understands you and your thought process and your mindset, and can work with you in the process. That's why I think it's really helpful to work with someone, because so much of your health journey happens between here. And I don't mean the effect of the drugs here. I mean sort of the thoughts,
The weight
the
between your ears,
connections.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's so much here. And maybe that's not such a big deal for you in the first 6 months. It will be a big deal at some point, I promise.
It will.
And so, you know, maybe it's 12 months, 24 months. At some point it will come up. And if you haven't done work up here, you're going to struggle at some point, or struggle a lot. And so I think working with people who can be supportive, who can help you develop those insights, help you understand yourself, support you through that process, keep you grounded so you're not constantly falling into that sort of problematic culture, I think is incredibly underrated.
Yeah, JT and I, like, I would say, like, we really focus on our lives, to being an ear and being able to give our perspective to things. But I'm telling you, 50% of the time, we just need to talk to your doctor, because we can tell people like what our experience is. But I know that the reason this is coming us, because people are they either don't have the money, or they don't have the resources, they don't have the network, and that's a huge problem, you know? So when they come to us, you know, we say, hey, this is what it's kind of like for me. This is what I've heard from other communities. But from what you're telling me, you know, like a violent reaction where you're vomiting, you know, those kinds of things, that's a doctor conversation. And we we tend to push back a lot on that. So we try to find kind of like that happy medium of support, because they may not have a care team. I mean, I think something to consider is that is a very privileged thing that people are able to have as a care team, you know, and even these medicines, unfortunately, I think are also, people are in a privileged position to be able to take them, which is not okay. And we want to change that, you know, but I think there has to be like this sort of commonality or I don't know, happy medium, you know, that we're able to support from a community perspective, because I don't think I would have even talked to my doctor about things if it hadn't been for someone in my community going, it's time, you know? And sometimes I think we have to hear that from people that look like us, you know? I think, anyway, that's just my opinion, you know? Sorry.
It's been there.
Yeah. It's, and, you know, also when you have a community, I didn't find these ladies until like January of 2023. I had made a TikTok account. I'd never posted a video. I didn't know anything about these medications. And like my doctor just said, and this is not a slight to her, take it on a Friday, just in case you have side effects. She said you may have GI side effects. And that's what I knew. and so I like walked my little happy tail right out the doctor's office, like, okay, so now what do I do? And it's just so comforting to have, you know, you, Dr. Albert, where you know, come on and you give your time and you explain not just the what you should do, but the why we should do it and how it affects our body and how it affects our minds, because it's so helpful.
The aha moments, right, JT? Like those, you and I have them all the time. We're like, oh, we get them from Dr. Albert all the time. We'll send them to each other.
Yeah. And like even today, when you have people, when people see a picture of you, like I'm in London right now and it's a little chilly outside. So I had on a jacket, but I took the jacket off when I got to Buckingham Palace because of the gold arches. And I just thought I wanted to take the jacket off. I sent the picture to a friend and they said, don't lose any more weight.
Yeah.
And Dr. Albert, what or how would you recommend people in the community like
That's
deal
so
with
unfair.
that? It's like,
just put him in the hot seat. So, no.
I did.
Tell me, what comeback would you say to this stupid ass person?
We heart you, Dr. Albert, but the like petty in me wanted to come out and play the but I was like, no,
you should play some Benny Hill.
It's part of the journey. I mean, people are always gonna like, and that's
I
their
didn't want to
discomfort.
be too petty today.
You know?
I was like,
yeah.
Did you just
I hope
really
somebody tells me don't lose any more weight. Do it. Do it.
I know it. Yeah.
Dr. Albert can feel me. Do it.
I wanted to be like Dr. Albert and like have a quote up and be like dancing.
Yeah, you do. Do dances.
But I was like, no, no, I'm not going to do that today.
Yeah.
But thank you, Dr. Albert.
And then JT, he's like, I said nothing. I love it so much.
I love it.
It's kind of like when it's kind of like your own. That's your own little way to.
But I think everybody's going to have that at some point.
Way
you
to
know,
handle.
and the one thing I would say is that what I have learned in life is that when people make comments like that, any comment like that, it's way more about their insecurities than it is about you. And that is very freeing to me and this other half of my life, you know, because it's easier for me to forgive and extend grace. I mean, don't get me wrong. Y'all know I'll shut people down, but it's easier for me to move on for me when I can recognize that they're the ones that have an issue and they're just projecting, you know, and that just makes it easier for me. It's not about them. It's about me being able to move on and not have my feelings hurt because I am very smushy, you know, but I guess
I can't remember. There was some influencer who had like one of the best lines. They said, anytime someone makes an unwanted comment or unsolicited comment, I always tell myself, or I say aloud, I don't receive that. So it's like, you keep the powers. Like, I don't receive that comment. I never let it sort of get to me. I just thought the way that you've like changed the wording on that, it's like, I'm not even, this is, you decided to put this out there, but I'm not going to internalize it. I don't receive it.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty brilliant reframe.
That's a good
And
one.
so I love some, some of those changes.
Those-
Those are wonderful.
Those reframe responses are great. Or like, what did you mean by that? Like when you ask somebody, like when you feel like maybe it might be backhanded or anything like that. Did you mean that? What did you mean by that?
Yeah.
I just want to mention as well, like I had the opposite because I've lost and gained weight so many times. But I remember the first time I gained, like I lost 50 pounds. It was like 20 years ago. It was exact opposite. And we'll just touch a little bit on this. My mother said absolutely nothing when she saw me. So that's when, and then I had to learn that, you're so used to being the scapegoat, and you still used to being like the butt of jokes, that she didn't know what to do. It was deep. That's been 20 years. That's some
You still
therapy,
need to do
but
that mental health. We gotta have to do
yeah.
that mental health one and trauma. We gotta get into that.
That's
What trauma does to the brain. I'm looking for a
all the
neurologist. Like,
pillars.
I'm on it. We're gonna have to
all
do that
the whole
episode.
spectrum.
Yes.
And Dr. Albert handles all of this, but yeah, probably not all of all the pillars. You can't. Well, I don't know. Are you coach Dr. Albert too sometimes? So
Yeah.
But, I get it, but yeah,
I do what I
that's
can.
why you
I do
have
what
all
I
the
can. I'll
pillars.
just put it that way.
Yep. So everybody fits a piece of the puzzle. So yeah.
Yeah.
I hope we move forward in society. Like, I have seen some videos that you've done where you've been like, God, I just feel like it's such a fight and it's such a battle. And like, I will say, it's really nice as someone who is a patient that's going through this to see that a doctor feels that too, to see that a doctor is showing up and like fighting for us, because that has not been the case, and we know there's lots of reasons for that, but regardless, it isn't. And it's nice to be able to see, and it gives us hope. So we appreciate you so much for the things that you do, because I know that you don't have to make that content. I know that you don't have to tell us those things. I know that you could keep that up to yourself and only for your patients and all of those different things, but you don't, because you want to make a difference and change things. So we love having you on the show because of that. So thank you so much for what you do.
We love it.
It means the world to us and our community. So thank you so much for coming. I know we've kept you over time, and we appreciate your patience with our technical difficulties. Journey. And it's been great. I think this is a really good way to end our first season.
Yeah.
What do you think, guys? Start with Dr. Albert in with it. Oh, we have to work him in next. What we're going to do for season 2. We're coming at you.
Guys.
I don't know.
If we haven't worn you out yet. So if we haven't worn out our welcome yet, right? So, but yeah, we appreciate it so much.
I'm gonna get him when he's on a live. Be like, Dr. Albert. That's what I do.
So what were you saying?
Are you on the show? Yes, Kim, I'll come on the show. I love it. He's a busy bee. He does what he can. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And but I think we're out, guys. It's a wrap. 24 episodes. And there's still so much more to talk about. So we promise, community, we're going to keep the conversation going. And luckily, we've got some really good sponsors and some things coming up, which means I can do paid marketing and get as loud as we possibly can, So all of those things just help move all of this forward. And we appreciate your support and you engaging with the content. And we hope that you're learning something. And I think that, it's a blessing. I truly feel honored that we are in this position to be able to help in any way. And the messages that you send us about the way that certain things resonate with you and that you don't feel alone and that it's not your fault and you understand that your disease better and these medicines, I live for them. I live for them. This was what it feels like to be a doctor. To go, oh my God, I fixed something. Although I didn't fix shit. But got mental health coming up. I'm going to find a neurologist. I'm on the hunt. Dinosaur monkey farts on the hunt. Find a neurologist. It's going to happen. I got to go charm somebody. I'll work it out. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So that is a wrap, team. We'll see you in a week. Thanks so much for the first great season.